Here we go. Welcome, Nate, to the personal experience of bipolar disorder. So, can you share your personal journey with bipolar, when you were diagnosed, maybe, and how it kind of started, where it's
Yeah.
at, and how you're managing it today, kind of thing,
Yeah,
briefly.
so I was briefly, you asking too
No
much.
sweat.
Well, I was diagnosed when I was 14, 14 or 15. Um, and yeah, it kind of came about and probably recognizing oh, this is weird. Like grade school, junior high, I started to get a little bit I was noticing some depression, not so much on the mania side.
So, did somebody see it in you? Did you notice it was going on with
No, it
you?
was probably more
At,
me.
okay,
I recognized stuff was off
okay.
before anybody else did. In fact, that's a good question. Uh, it wasn't until freshman year that my mom had come home one day from work, and I was up in, I had the top bunk doing my math homework, and I was pretty, I guess you could say, distraught. And she was asking me what was going on, and I just had tears coming to my eyes, and I didn't even know what was what it was the start
So
of.
that's symptomatic,
Yeah,
would you say?
yeah, I would say symptomatic.
Okay.
But I feel like back then it was hard to. It was pretty scary because all this was happening. You didn't have no commercials letting you know. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't know anything until I don't know, went to see a psychiatrist, and they kind of would say a
The
few things.
stigma would still be out there, is what you're saying.
It would still be out there. Not even the stigma, just the not even know. You know, it's amazing how much there was a stigma. They say
Information.
stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
information though too.
Okay.
So yeah, but
So then you're up on the bunk. Ma comes home.
yeah, and I can't. I would probably have to ask her because I don't remember. I'm not sure how long from that moment it took before I started to see somebody,
Okay.
therapist wise, psychiatrist wise. I
Okay.
think it was still a pretty while because it. I think we kind of started out as high school was tough, adjustment and stuff like
Okay.
that. But if I remember correctly, it didn't. As much as I was going with that kind of that story, I kind of knew it was something else.
And
I
I'm
recognized it
sure.
wasn't normal.
Yeah. I'm sure your mom picked up on it too, right? Is well,
I
you're
did a
the only child though, right?
no,
Oh no.
one of three.
Oh, you're one of three.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
And where do
oldest.
you fit in? You're the oldest,
The
medium.
oldest.
Okay.
The oldest. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So you're
So
paving
no,
the
she
way.
completely. Maybe looking back now, maybe if I asked her, she'd notice some like mood things like that. But she was not prepared. She had no clue it was like that
Right.
because
Right.
I did a pretty good job of hiding it. And
Yeah.
again, I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And it was rough because I couldn't go like I didn't know how to explain it. I think one of the things that we struggle with like mental illness is describing how you're feeling because you could say I could have said, you know what, I'm having a bad day, but my mom could have said she had a bad day at work, but there were two different bad days.
Right. No
You know,
doubt.
so like I I knew I was feeling pain, mental pain and anguish, but I didn't know how to express that. So it was kind of like, well, what do I tell anybody? And I don't know if really it was me hiding it as much as knowing how to explain it. So it was a little bit of both,
Well
probably.
put. Well put. Because there's a lot going on at 14, right?
Yeah, and you're just like, and it wasn't until obviously I started going to therapy and psychiatrist and stuff like that where I recognized stuff was coming to light. Because at the end of the day, like I said, I was feeling just weird. Weird's not the right word, but in grade school, I just started to notice more of a depression, more of an awareness of just hard to control emotions. I remember I started getting emotional.
Okay.
Not and again, when I say that, not so much crying, but like during the um, say like during the day at school or even at home, things were things were affecting me easier than they used to be.
Sure.
And I think that was the crack coming through where the dam was breaking because they'd done such a good job of just holding everything in and burying it that I think it was slowly coming through.
Leakage. You had leakage.
I couldn't
coming
control
through.
it. Yeah, leakage.
You had leakage coming.
Didn't
through.
have enough fingers to plug the holes with different things. So yeah.
So then, after that, let's use your mom, the bunk bed kind of thing. Did you get into the doctor's office at that point? A little bit after?
Probably a little bit after, because I think I was. I'm not going to remember exactly when, but I was probably diagnosed with something probably a year after that or 2 years after that.
So early high school, late grammar school, early high school.
This happened, so that incident happened probably early high school, early freshman year. By the time freshman year ended, I think I was already in the hospital.
Watch that microphone. Move.
Yeah, it's like...
No, okay. So then let's continue on into, so now you get the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then...
And that kind of helped. We found out that my dad probably was, and that it ran on my dad's side.
Okay. So genetic.
Yeah, more susceptible to get that.
So you're still in high school, sophomore year-ish.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor, and then what's their solution at that point? Or what's their suggestion at that point? There's no meetings. You're not facilitating nothing yet.
No, I'm not facilitating yet. So it's pretty much a psychiatrist, not a therapist, and the hospital. So we kind of got these extremes. Yeah, you're right on the money there, Ray. There wasn't like there was, hey, tell me how you're feeling. Take a little bit of this or a little bit of that.
Right.
Or if and then when you're feeling extreme cases, you're in the hospital in groups and stuff like that. But I was diagnosed at 14. I probably wasn't learning about how to handle bipolar and coping skills probably for another 10, 15 years.
Okay. And
Everything,
that's a rough 10 years.
Yeah, and
right?
I don't know if you've ever been through anything, but it's without the coping skills, just finding anything to like survive.
Right.
Distractions.
Plus, we're not around our people yet at this point, right? There aren't.
No, not even.
It's all individual.
No, I'm by myself, and it's all you're getting through the day. You feel like by just willing yourself, and hopefully medication is carrying you through. But there's no. I don't have the tools in the toolbox yet.
Right.
I don't even know what the tools are. You
right.
know, it's always
tools. What tools?
Tools. I don't have no
what
tools.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so yeah, it was a very long time before things like that. Now, how much I didn't listen or apply certain things when I was in the hospital, or stuff I couldn't look up. But again, we're before computer age.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you go check out the bipolar, God's gift to those inflicted with bipolar and how to make it through the day.
Right.
You know,
right.
through faith.
Right. You're working out of a phone book. You're working out of the pages.
Yeah, there wasn't anything like that, so it was very scary. So we just had to basically use your survival skills in terms of just fighting through it. And
nobody else in the family, your siblings, no effect there.
I think I don't want to go there in terms of
no, just for reference, not.
And nobody was diagnosed with bipolar.
Yeah. Okay. So you're, and the only reason I bring that up is so you're running solo. It's not like the house is on a team anti-bipolar, right?
No.
You're
and I don't think they could handle
you're on your
one. You know, but no, there wasn't. You didn't have a running mate. You didn't have a peer that you could call, and they knew what was going on.
Solo mission. Yeah,
it was a solo mission. It was
yeah,
very
and
hard.
that's that I mean, that's the worst part, right? Is being alone with the disease, and then not having anybody to bump it off and go, you know what? Because help me understand your experience of bipolar. So, what is bipolar? It's the ups and the downs.
So bipolar.
For you.
All right, so let me do it kind of like through my. So bipolar, generally speaking, is a mood disorder, and you experience highs and lows on extreme, assisted by extremes. So your depression is times 1,000. Your happiness is times 1,000. So I like to look at it as, you know what, Ray? Next time we do this, I don't know if it'll work, but I'd love to use a diagram of. I use this. I've been given these. What did they call? Can't think of the word.
Workshops,
Not the workshops. Those.
one-on-ones.
No. You're done on it. Slides.
Presentation.
Presentation. We'll just call it a presentation. But I did it in my CRSS class where it's. I named it Bipolar Through My Eyes, and I utilize the clock. With the 12 old school. My kids can't tell time on a regular clock, so the old school one with the 12 on the top and the 6 on the bottom. And my mood is, I guess you could say, is the hands, and it's a pendulum swinging, going back and forth, and it's we all have a stable, and then we have one of the stages is like hypomania, which is kind of the start. And then there's a mania, and then each one of these stages has their own characteristics or these symptoms that go along with it. And it's the same thing on the other side. It's just as equal.
Oh, okay.
And they're just as powerful, but then on the negative.
So when you're high, you're high. When you're low, you're low.
Yeah, basically.
And then there's a couple stages.
There's a couple stages. So let me see if I can come out. So the hypo stage is like picture all of us have a base where if you were to look at a lot of people, not all people, but generally speaking, I'll just stick with myself. So when I feel like I'm stable, when I wake up in the morning, I have, I get up, put my slippers on, go to the bathroom, do whatever. But normally I have to think about those things. You wake up, things go after one right after another. I like to describe the hypomania phase as almost like you're in a Zen state. You're in the zone where you don't even have to think, you just do. And it's a pretty, you're very efficient. Things kind of like roll off your back. And they don't even really roll off your back because you don't even notice them. The mania stage is kind of when, and you're very efficient. Let me go back to the hypo. You're a very efficient person, very highly functioning.
Right. You're
get
all
2 or
gas.
3 done.
You're all gas, no brakes.
You're all gas, no brakes. But you know when you can brake when you want to.
Okay.
The mania phase is for me, that's when things, and for the most part, and I apologize for going back and forth, but as I talk, I'm gonna be thinking about certain things. In the hypo phase, maybe somebody that's close to you can recognize it from the outside, but most people can't recognize it. Once you get to the mania phase, usually people start recognizing it. The speech starts picking up. You're talking faster. You're still making sense, but you're just talking faster. And maybe where in that hypo phase, you could do 2 or 3 things at once. Mania phase, you still feel like you could do two or three things at once, but they're not getting completed.
So hypo is at the top.
No, hypo is the first stage on your way to the top.
Oh, okay. To the crash.
Yeah, hypo would be at like 3, or no, hypo is about 5.
Okay.
Between 5 and 4.
Okay.
The mania is the 3. You know what? I think I'm gonna do a presentation.
So we're working from the top
hypo
down.
No, we're working from stable to up.
Okay.
And when I say that, the reason why I'm saying up is because the mania I look as going up.
Got it.
The depression on the negative is going down.
Got it.
So once you get to the mania, you have things like my wife comes home and she's like, "What'd you do today?" And I'd be like, "I did all 8 loads of laundry. I painted the house. Took out a loan, maybe. I don't know. But things are a little bit more erratic. You're very efficient, but you're running on I don't know how to explain explain it, but I do know how to explain it. I wish I had. Yeah, I wish I did what I could do right now. What we did today at my meeting, we were throwing things out and symptoms at each stage. You're starting to feel a little euphoria. Yeah, I'll just skip to the next one. We could get a little bit more technical another time, but then you reach the hypermania. Now we're talking about wanting to start a business. You're starting to feel a little bit more intense feelings. One of the things that slowly starts happening is your senses start getting heightened, and I call them spidey senses because everything's as a heightened. One of the things I'll explain a couple things here. For just to give an example of like sense of smell. So it is very strong and heightened when I'm in these stages. So if there could be a bowl or a pot of chili cooking, grandma's red sauce, and then great-great-grandma's chicken noodle soup on the stove. Now, for most people, they'll smell that there's food cooking, but they'll probably smell everything all at once. There's just something that smells good. In my heightened stage, at the same time, I could smell each one individually at the same time.
Wow.
Hearing kind of goes the same way. If I'm in this stage and I'm outside, maybe there's cars going by, there's an ambulance, there's crickets, there's this and that. Again, very loud, very intense, very clear, and you're hearing everything separately from one another. And that's like a big, at the same time.
Wow.
Sight. And again, all this can happen in every one of these stages. It's just as the stages are going up, it's getting more and more heightened. Visually, things are getting very more stimulating. The lights are brighter. Color is overstimulating. Even you may find yourself in the living room if you got a bunch of knickknacks or your wife has got some knickknacks. Everything seems like it's just a little bit too much. You could kind of visually, at this point, maybe you could use a room with nothing in it, right, because you're overstimulated. And then kind of like the spidey sense that comes with the visual along with that is maybe when I'm stable, I'm staring at a couch and I see that it's brown. But in the heightened stage, I'm looking at the couch, but I can see every piece of lint. Some of it because I'm focusing on it, but you kind of get hyper fixated on stuff. So you're seeing all the details. If I was to look at a colorful rug that had, let's say, a picture of a car on it, I could see all the weavings. Everything's very detailed oriented.
Wow.
This may come in where there's maybe like there's a hypersexual aspect to the manias, along with you may hear people that spend a lot of money. So with the hypersex thing is more like your drive. Everything gets heightened, and then you're feeling. So even like your sense of touch, somebody touches, you're just feeling everything at a heightened state.
More intense.
Taste is like, if you want to taste your favorite food at a particular time, have somebody cook it when you're hypomanic state. Like it'll taste good. Butter, garlic. And you're also, at these stages, I'm also feeling kind of one with everything. So now a lot of people describe this God-like, Jesus, religious, maybe even a spiritual awakening coming on. And one of the reasons why we'll say that is because you start being in touch with everything. I think you hear people talk about they've done like psychedelics and they become one with everything. I know one of the things that I've done in the past is when I'm in one of these stages is go out into the backyard and the breeze and the sun, the moon, the stars,
nature,
everything is connecting. Yeah, you feel like you're just one with it instead of standing in your yard and just being able to see and feel that stuff. You feel like you're a part of it. I'm real sensitive at that moment to think that I'm getting in tune with, the waves coming to shore has got to do where the moon is at, and the waves coming into the shore has got to do with the leaves and
It's
the
all
wind
making
blowing.
sense.
Everything's making sense.
Everything's making sense.
And not only is it making sense, at this point you're starting to feel like it's also making sense because of you.
Right. Right.
Hey, not only am I a part of this, I may be the reason why. Okay, and that's where you start. I've even gotten to the point where, like, when I'm speaking, I feel like I'm not Jesus, but I'm speaking for him. And that's when psychosis starts happening. And
Right. So
there's a real
what?
disconnect from reality. And
Okay.
again, another thing to say: slowly disconnecting from reality when you're
Yep.
going up there.
Yep.
And when I say disconnect from reality, things like what are you capable of doing and what are you not capable of doing, and you know. If I'm stable, probably taking out $1,000 loan tomorrow to start a business, I could probably take a step back and say something like, probably not a good idea. In the maniac stage, it's the best idea.
Yeah.
And
You're not doing 8 loads of laundry. You're not painting a house at this point.
no,
You're not
starting business.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And you would also, you could be you're close to God. You think you could take Elon's position.
Yeah.
You're just off the deep.
And let me ask you this: the duration that pendulum starts going from where you spoke about to where you're at now, is there a? I know it's not like 7 days, and you set your watch to it.
It
kind
could
of thing.
be. It could be.
Oh, really?
It could be at any. So let me put it to you like this. Let's say the start happens on a Monday, and let's say for story's sake, it ends on next Friday. So it's a 2-week
Binge.
You got a 2-week.
whatever.
You got a
Better.
2-week period, right? Now within that 2 weeks, you could be swaying.
Okay.
However, you're still going through it consistently every day.
Right.
It could be, and again, when you're talking about going from stable to hyper or hypo, which is the first stage, to the mania, you could be having days where you really don't feel it. But as you keep moving up, you realize, you're kind of, and I'm gonna be honest with you here. I've gotten to the point where I think to a certain degree I'm able to notice the red flags to kind of keep myself, okay, I'm getting a little bit too, let's back down just my actions and stuff like that. But for somebody who doesn't have a good grip on their illness, it could take you for a ride, and it's basically being on a roller coaster, and the roller coaster is going to do whatever he wants with you because you don't have the ability to do anything. But I think what you were getting at is the duration can kind of last based on what you do and not do, and then kind of where the illness wants to take you, depending on what stages you're at. Like, you can spend any amount of time in either one of those stages for as long as your body allows you to. Because once you start getting to the mania stage and the psychosis stage, your body can only function at that level for so long before it crashes.
Shutdown? Yeah, there's got to be a shutdown.
There's a point when your body just says, no, like, I can't do no more. It's not a I've gotten tired.
Right.
I've gotten this. It's like your body shuts down.
Done.
I forget. I don't want to speak too much on this, but it's got a lot to do with the frontal cortex lobe. One of the things that, if I can say this too, one of the things that is a slow sign and a big part of this is sleep. So people with bipolar, especially when they're starting to experience the mania stages, is we need less and less sleep. Yep. And people will be like, well, so what, you kind of have touch of, or you have like insomnia? And I'm like, no. The difference between somebody with bipolar and somebody with insomnia is people with insomnia can't fall asleep. The people that are going up on a manic phase is their body doesn't need sleep.
Right.
And that's where that
you're recharged, your batteries, in a less and
think about somebody who's maybe done a speedball, cocaine, or something like that. And I try to watch what I compare it to, but you hear people on meth or maybe like up for 3 or 4 days. We can get on that level of just like, your body's being forced to do that against its natural ability, but you're still able to break through and do it. But eventually it's got to come down.
So is there, and that's not using anything. That's not like over drinking.
That's why to everybody out there, that's why I've never really touched anything, because I can get on your levels without any. Now, my ability to snap my finger and get there, I don't. It's a little bit harder,
Takes its own course. Yeah.
but I don't know where I'd go on. There's been people. I gotta watch myself too taking this, but there's been people that have gone on a mania, hit psychosis, and never came back.
Right.
The same. I don't want to say that there's always in psychosis, but there's been some people that just don't. They don't really come back from reality, or they're
Right.
kind of messed up for. I don't know if that answered, but
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And
as I talk, there's more and more things, feelings, and situations, and I'd like to think, for the most part, I've experienced everything that you could possibly experience with bipolar in my own way. But I believe I've hit every stage. Maybe not to a height of psychosis, because I never thought I could
you
fly.
made it back. Well, you made it back.
There are
right?
some people that think a lot of. I definitely feel I've been detached from a reality a lot, but there's been a lot of people that have, gotten a plane ticket to England and or Hollywood and thought they could become an actress. I probably haven't got to that, but I've definitely gotten to the God, spiritual, Jesus, which is a pretty good indication that you're psychosis.
So I remember you sharing a story, and it was. It was. This was growth, because you were saying early on you were going through an episode, or however it might work, and then after what you thought was a couple days, you go to your wife and you said, "Hey, I think I was a little funky 2 days ago," and she goes, "Nope." She goes, "That was 3 weeks ago. Tuesday about 4:00 is when I noticed that."
Yeah. Well, two things there that I think you heard, Ray, that I'll share with you on two different occasions, two examples. One was I was on a manic high, and I decided to get in the car in my van and go. A lot of times when I get into the mania, there's a lot of pent up energy, along with being jacked up in terms of, what do I mean by jacked up? The mania feels like you're on a high. Your mind's going fast. Your body feels like it's running, or it should be running. So a lot of the times, how I would relieve that would be with exercise, or just running until I couldn't run no more.
Right.
Because I had so much energy in me, it was very hard to stay in a house. I've recognized as I've gotten older, it's very hard for me to feel like I'm in a house. I always kind of have this trap feeling. But anyway. There was a time when I got in my van just to go. So one of the things when I got older was like go for rides. It didn't really equate to running with the energy, but it would ease my mind, put on some music.
Sure.
And one of the times was, yes, I thought I was gone for, I don't know. I don't want to say less than a day, but yeah, a fairly short amount of time when I found out. It was 2 or 3 days. And then I think what else you were kind of referring to is one of the real benefits that your family can do with you and that you could help them with is recognize when you're not well, even without you telling them. So the story you're referring to is there's times where I'm not feeling good and I don't know whether to tell my wife. And when I say I don't know if I should tell my wife, number one, there's a couple things going on. I don't want to worry her if eventually it's going to pass. I don't want her to think. I don't want her to get scared, whatever the reason. But then if it gets a few more days down the road, I'll say, it's time to tell her. And most of the time I'll tell her, and I'm scared about telling her and thinking that she doesn't notice anything. And she says, I say, babe, you know what? I'm going to admit to you, it's been a couple days since I've been feeling good and I'm getting kind of worried. She's like, yeah, I recognized that 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So I give a lot of credit to her because somebody that has mental illness, or even your partner or significant other, even your family members, it's definitely very beneficial for us to be self-aware, but also our family members to be so in tune with how we move, how we don't move, and to be able to tell, where we're at even without us saying anything, because we don't always want to say anything.
And that's the thing about mental illness, right?
Yeah.
Is it takes us where it takes us, and we don't want to speak on it and let somebody else know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Especially early on. Especially early on. Once we get around our people, then it becomes, like you said, first you get a tool bag,
Yeah.
and then you get a tool to put in that tool bag, then you use it, and then it's not such a, it's not so, sharing a problem is having one half is
Yeah.
having a problem. So if I can let you know what's going, and the sooner that I let you know what's going on, the better, typically,
Yeah, because we could tackle it then.
because it's similar to anything. If you catch a cold in the front of it, it doesn't get you to the flu.
Right. Right.
Uh,
But where you were,
mentality.
where I think you were maybe going and maybe you weren't going, Ray, was kind of like, yeah, before we knew what the heck was going on, it was kind of like, and I'm not talking about me and my wife. I'm talking about when I was struggling for those 10 or 12 years where you really didn't have the
That's a long
toolbox.
time.
Yeah, you felt something, but like you would, and I don't want to say I would think about it this deeply or I was in tune this much, but I was kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna tell my mom, what's that gonna do?
Yeah.
Like I was just gonna involve a second person that has no clue what to do,
Right.
which sometimes felt worse than not because now they're worried, and it's not that I didn't want them to be worried or I felt bad, even though that was a part of it a little bit, but I was like, ain't no point in this either. And now, like you said, once you're able to learn coping skills, learn groups, be around people who've dealt with it too, you can kind of share experiences
Yeah.
and learn. Where
Yeah.
before we're all swimming without a life preserver,
Right.
and nobody knew how to throw us a life.
Right.
Yeah.
And anything with numbers, there's safety in that, because a lot of the mental illnesses, maybe not a lot, but some of the similarities is that isolation,
Yeah.
right? Is that even though I think I'm rocking and rolling, you were driving for a day or 2 days by yourself. You weren't
Yeah.
with your wife, your family, your friends, doing whatever.
And you want to talk about spidey skills? I was able to drive for blocks at a time with my eyes closed, switching lanes. And that was
Yeah.
another thing I remember on driving and just having this innate sense of, yeah, I found myself texting while driving 90-94 going into the city, and being able to, a lot of times when you're in the mania, the world and everybody slows down, and you could just see it almost everything seems like a chessboard, and you playing the chessboard like
and you're making the moves.
you're making the moves.
You're
Now from the
making the moves.
outside, depending on where you're at and how bad, you're losing the game.
Yeah.
But you're feeling like you're winning. But because nothing's interrupting it, you have this false sense of the unreality that I'm in, and everybody knows is my reality. So,
All right, so let's go back. We're on the
Yeah.
pendulum.
yeah,
We're
go
on
ahead.
boom to the boom. What's next?
So
you
for
did
me,
hypo, then you did mania.
then I did hypermania, and then psychosis. So for me, if I can, I'll start like this. I probably have a tendency, generally speaking, and for my own personality, kind of hover. If I say stable, I probably hover around a little bit around the kind of depressed natural state. Not a negative person, but have always kind of felt like I needed a pick me up or a self affirmation in the morning to get my mind kind of right, which isn't a bad thing.
Right.
But I would say on a stable wise, I kind of move. My starting point is kind of like around there. One of the things for me, at the same time though, experiencing the extreme depressions comes after extreme manias,
Mm-hmm.
or long periods of time in any particular spot in the stages of the mania.
Right.
I should say no longer, because I can pay attention. So maybe back when I was younger, and it was when I was younger, if I could say this, it was a lot easier to find myself in stages and not knowing how I got there, because I didn't know the red flags. I didn't know, not only did I not know coping skills or tools, I didn't know when to apply them because it just felt like, again, going back to that person that doesn't know how to deal with the illness or can
Right.
understand it.
Right.
It's taking you for rides and doing whatever the heck it wants with you. You don't have no control over it. So I say that to say, um, I I normally don't get depressed or extreme depressed by itself.
Right.
It's usually after a mania crash. Now, there are times during the year when the sun disappears and stuff like that. I kind of get that natural. Things are a little bit more on the depressed side. Yeah. But I swing to the mania and then crash to the depression. And if I could describe the stages on the depression, now between like the 78, you're kind of looking at like a sadness. Think of something like your favorite team loses or your girl breaks up with you. Somewhere in there, where something during the day kind of got you feeling a little blue, right? Then I kind of move it to to the 9 is kind of like more your depression. Your output slower, harder to get out of bed.
Brain fog, maybe.
Brain fog, not finding joy in certain things.
Yep.
Then your start, for me, when I move in between that like 10 and 11 before I get to that manic depression is kind of maybe losing interest in the things you love. Maybe you're staying in bed a lot longer. Maybe you're avoiding phone calls. Kind of that despair. You're kind of grasping at hope and despair. You're in there where like let me just quick. I'll move to the manic depression. The manic depression for me, which I call manic depression because well, that's kind of what it is. So you deal with depression and you deal with mania. I say a manic depression is because think of the intense of a mania, but just on the depression side.
Right.
Okay. So at that point, that's where like, I don't know what you've been through, but that's when like hope's gone.
Right.
That's when like, it's hard to use words, but like things like despair.
Yeah.
Like it's just like,
The
and then
sun's
even maybe
coming up, the birds are chirping,
and you see black,
and right,
and you see black.
You don't want none of it.
You don't want none of it. You can't even see it, and maybe you can even throw a little bit of purpose and meaning goes out the window.
Yeah.
Just nothing is. I hear that word nothingness, where nothing just, you don't feel anything. And you're starting to become numb feeling wise. Even though you're feeling that deep, dark depression,
Right.
you're not feeling.
There's nothing good getting felt, right?
No,
it's
nothing
all on the
is.
negative side.
It's all on the negative side. And there's this painting or this picture that's very vivid in my mind because I feel like I've one of the best ways that I've learned how to describe mental illness to people is through artwork, images, and analogies and metaphors, because it's hard to describe these things to people to have them understand the way you'd like them to. So I described I would like somebody to make this for me, but there's a picture I visualize. You're at the bottom. Here's manic depression. You're at the bottom of a well, and you're so far down that the only amount of sunlight you could see is like a pin, like a needle, right? And you're struggling for hope. You see that little bit of light, so that's like your hope. But you're talking about 100 feet down. You're feeling alone. You're desperate. Maybe like despair is sticking in and stuff like that. And then, for the most part, that's about as much as I feel like the average human being can kind of muster in terms of like the depressed state, because I feel like they're still hanging on to hope and reality. Mm-hmm. And I feel like once you reach the manic depression, what ends up happening is you don't even realize it, but you're on a trap door down there. And the trap door opens and you fall through it. There's no bottom and you're just falling. That trap door closes. So now you're just at a free fall. There's no longer hope. There's just despair. God knows where you're going from there. And it's just a bottomless black hole.
Isolation and the mental
It's
abuse that goes on with that.
and the mental abuse, like you said, and when you say the mental abuse, what I hear is the constant negative self talk,
Right.
repeating
Right.
how much you're a loser, how
Just
much now you're a loser,
Relentless.
relentless pounding.
Relentless.
And unless you have somebody there to grab
all right.
you,
Yes.
take you for a walk, pull you out of the bed, you are not going.
Okay. So this is the part that I love. So we got the illness.
Yeah.
Now, how do we manage the wellness? So if you could just briefly go back in the day, you said there was a doctor, a PhD, whatever. I
Yeah,
forget what you said.
psychiatrist.
Psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So then now you're starting to get, now it's getting addressed, right?
Yeah.
You're not alone with it no more, which is
Right.
whether we realize it at the time or not is a benefit, right?
Yeah.
So then now your family gets to know, hey, these guys, Nate isn't the only one. There's not a defect in the gene,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is that we're going to be okay. Is we're going to put our trust in the people. So kind of walk through that process briefly of how you began to manage the wellness part, because you've explained the illness very well, and thank you for that.
So,
So how do we get into managing wellness?
so when
Hold on, let me ask you this first.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned 10 years, roughly,
yeah.
is that you were kind of on your own island with it.
Yeah, I would say so. I had the support of my so let me clarify. So I had the support of a therapist, a psychiatrist, my family if I needed to go into the hospital. But on a day-to-day basis, there wasn't if this happens, do this.
Right. Would you consider that managing wellness?
No,
No.
no, it wasn't managing.
So let's get into the part to where you start, because you're an exercise guy, you're a trainer and all that kind of stuff.
Exercise always played a role in managing. So yeah, one of the stories I tell that it may be funny, and it was even funny back then. I had fun with it, but as I mentioned before, there's a lot of pent up energy when you're feeling the mania. You can't sit still. It's so in high school, I had the ability to raise my hand. The teacher see me, and there'd be a head nod, and I would get to run around the school to the hallways to wear off my energy. Sometimes I had the key to the weight room. So that was always a thing where I could channel the energy into. And again, but even that, there was a right time to do that and a wrong time to do that.
Right. And this is the excess energy.
The excess energy that comes with just, your motor's running. It's like, when I'm stable, I'm a Honda 4-cylinder. When the mania's kicking in,
you're on the rail.
V12,
2.25 miles.
whatever.
Yeah.
So that was one way I managed. But I'll be honest with you, So let me say this. I'm gonna be honest with you. I met my wife in 2023, late 2023, at our first date on 2020.
13 maybe?
No.
We're in 25, so it couldn't have been 23. Your kids are
2003.
Oh, 2003.
2003, 2004.
Okay.
I'd like to think that I owe the relationship with her a big time credit, because I'm not afraid to say for about a good 10, 15 years, about a year before I met her until about 2015 or 2016, there might have been some struggles a little bit before that. I just feel like my life with her and then getting married and like kids, purpose. What I'm trying to get is I think I started to manage wellness without knowing it.
Okay.
Had responsibilities with her, a house, and kids, commitment. There was structure going on that if I didn't do this, I couldn't do this. But there was a lot of, it was a lot of conscious effort in order to do that. I don't know if I was conscious going, I'm doing this to maintain wellness because I have bipolar.
Right.
I had to learn that at about 2015, 2016, which is, as you guys can imagine, with the time frame I've given out, a long time after I got diagnosed, in terms of doing things specifically to manage my bipolar.
On your own. You still haven't found your people yet, right?
Yeah, well, now
Or
we're
are
talking
you get-
2000,
are you getting
2014
introduced?
and 2015. So I was a part of NAMI doing groups early, like 1999, 2000 at the St. Joe's Hospital. But I was still just doing facilitating. It wasn't until about 2015 is when I met NAMI Will Grundy.
All right.
And between going to those meetings, some classes, stuff like that, and recognizing there's things on the internet and me taking it a little bit more serious. I had more things to lose now by not getting well.
Right.
Is when, again, I started being able to learning things to manage myself on, there's the RAP class.
Yeah.
There's this thing called RAP, Wellness.
So let's not use any names just because I don't know
Yeah,
what's
you don't
good
know.
or not.
Yeah.
But it ends up being self-support.
Yeah.
Right?
So
You
so
get a-
go
you-
back to your
you get
specific
around.
question, and I'll pick it up from there. But I just want to give the journey to this to managing wellness, like you asked,
Yeah.
came a lot long. It was a long
Took a
period
long
of time before
Right.
I was doing stuff specifically and consciously to maintain my wellness because I had bipolar.
Right.
Everything else was just kind of, I was doing it to maintain and survive the day in order to do whatever. And that helped me. After I met my wife, it was about, before I went to the hospital in 2016, it probably was a good 15 years since I did. So again,
Still.
long period of managing,
Yeah.
but not managing. And then if I was managing, there possibly wouldn't have been a fall in a
So
hospitalization.
did you
at 16.
get the message of self-supporting groups, I'll say?
Yeah, I got
on the
the.
second floor.
How
How did you get introduced to self-support groups?
I think you know what.
Stumped
I don't.
'em.
I don't
Stumped
remember.
'em.
Yeah, you stumped me. If I took a guess, it might have been while in a hospital.
Okay.
Because I couldn't tell you at that time where we pulled
So,
NAMI out
but-
of my.
yeah. So by
My
the time,
wife probably had something to do with it too. My
Okay.
wife and my mom were really on. Well,
Yeah.
my wife went to Family to Family,
Okay.
which is this class
Self-support
that
for
for people
the
with
family
loved ones.
members who are not.
So that's where I got
Yep.
it. And again, then I started to realize I was doing pretty good in these groups, and I slowly wanted to start, which I already done in the past, but not in a conscious basis, but start to help people.
Give
So
back
that-
what was given to you.
Right. So 2016, 2017, and based on like what you were just saying there, is kind of when I started delving into maintaining self. You know, what do I have to do to stay well, type of thing,
Right.
and what can I pass on to other people? So reading became a big thing. That's really when I started even learning more about bipolar, other than just the fact that it was a mood disorder and it had these symptoms. I started paying
You
attention
can
to
start identifying.
all these things that
This-
I've experienced through these different stages that I explained to you. I didn't always realize where that came from.
Right.
So now it was getting to know what I'm like when I'm well, what I'm not, what are people seeing, the signs and symptoms. So my journey to there was, I don't want to say it's sad sitting here talking about, but it's sad how long I had to go.
Yeah.
Without any of that,
And I
whether
think-
that was me or society or what information was out there, I'm not one to blame everybody else, but
Right. And I think the big thing is there's a difference between struggling, which everybody struggles, right? Everybody has come to a point in their life to where things are tough,
yeah,
which is not mental illness with my 2 cents.
No.
But it's the suffering that transitions into some kind of mental illness from what I've seen, experienced, whatever the deal is that it's like you said, the hopelessness. It's just that there's nothing worth
Yeah.
my time. I've eliminated myself from anything and
Anything
everybody,
worthwhile.
and then anybody too.
Yeah.
And then we're alone with the disease, right?
Right.
And if I'm alone with the disease is going to win, which is unacceptable. So, you know, it's that part of, it's kind of multi-phased. Is once I see somebody else, once I get around somebody else that actually says, "Hey, I manage bipolar," and then you've accepted that about yourself, right? That's the big part. It doesn't matter if the doctor knows I'm bipolar, or the wife or the family or my ma or the cousins or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm the one that needs, that acceptance that, yeah, it's a mental illness. But the beauty is now once we accept it, we go, what do we do now? So
Yeah.
now we get around other people who have similar experiences, and then they go, hey, I like to take a walk early in the morning because it makes me feel, I love when you say that. It makes me feel like I'm ahead of the game today, right?
Yeah.
That shot of hope.
Yeah.
And then that gets me doing the next right thing, so that becomes the managing part.
And the managing part too, Ray, is like what you're getting at is making me think of. I should have said this earlier, but I kind of describe living with bipolar as, again, almost like the Incredible Hulk in a way, where the mania as well as the depression is just beneath the surface, and on a day-to-day basis, my job is not to turn green.
Yeah, right.
It's just always there, right below the surface.
Right.
And getting to the point where, and I think managing it comes with the satisfaction comes with, you now feel like you're in control.
Yeah.
So a lot of these illnesses, whether it's depression, if you don't know how to pay attention to the red flags, or you don't know how to manage it, like, it owns you.
Yeah.
I've always, not always, but for the longest time, I felt like I was at its
Mercy.
I was at its mercy.
Mercy.
Whenever it wanted to show up and toss me around,
Yeah.
it would do it, and I would always sometimes wait for it.
And now with managing, it doesn't have that option, right? It
No.
still may seek and penetrate and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not an open door policy to where you
Right.
could come in and
Well, there's that wise guy that kind of describes it as like it's in a cage, and
Right.
it's not in a cage and stuff like that. And the key to that is who holds the key.
right.
They'll let it out.
That's
when
why
I
you got to
wanna-
weld it. Well, that's why you got to weld it,
Well, yeah.
and then
you can weld it.
yeah, and then just stay away from heat, so the
It'd
weld
be
doesn't
pretty,
come down there. But now let's kind of go through the managing part. What have you found to be so? You've tried many things, right? There's no one special formula
No.
that works.
No.
Just like the trap door, when you pull the trap door and it opens, that's the only one way thing that
That
works.
was a one way
every
that
time.
somebody flushed, and
Right.
you ain't coming back. You know what I mean?
So let's go through some of the managing.
So here,
that
I'll start with
fluctuates.
With this. Yeah, I'll start with the managing it. Let me just start with the managing, staying stable first, and then we can go into some of the other things in case I'm finding my way or I'm finding my way getting into areas or spots in my head that's not good.
Sure.
But I have a lot of people you'll hear like self-care. So I have a little notebook that every day I have. Is it 6? Well, we could sit here and count together. So I have sleep on it, then medication, then hygiene, then eat healthy. I got grateful journal on there, exercise, and then I added laundry and feed my fish on there. 2 things that are more like a chore. The other ones are a little bit more self-care personally. If I'm able to get up and do those things, I like to think of that as that's my check. I'm stable, or I'm managing. Okay. If I find myself that sleep is off, I haven't taken my medication, Nate, how's your hygiene? Oh, there's 3 days stubble.
Right.
I'm noticing.
Hygiene's a big one.
Yeah.
Hygiene's a big one.
And I think we all think of hygiene like we all like to look good, but like I don't know what it is, but it's one of the first ones when you're like I don't care.
Yeah.
It's the first one that goes. You just toss to the side.
Right. Laundry stacked up. You're wearing the same clothes 2, 3, 4, 5 days
And
in a
you're
row.
like I'm still going to Jersey Mike's. But
It's like a bad haircut. I don't have to look at it. You do.
right.
Right.
And so that's how I guess you could say I maintain. Now, I don't know if you want me to like expound a little bit on that, but some of the other things I could go to and is depending on where I'm at in certain stages.
Yeah.
If for some reason I've allowed it or it's gotten to there, then I can go over
Yeah,
how
because
to bring me back to that point or stuff like that.
exactly. Because that's what I want to get to is because before you said the disease, so to speak, had an open door policy.
Yeah.
When it
So
was
here,
in
let me
town-
okay,
Yep.
yeah. So let me explain that. So I like to think that there's a lot of things that can go on, and it's very it could be very complicated and very life can get complicated and triggers can happen,
Yeah.
environmental situations that can take this into to
Make it interesting.
make it interesting, right? But generally speaking, if I can explain it like this, for me, mania can happen if we want to generalize it, is too many things for me happening good on a consistent basis will put me in a mania.
Okay.
So now we're kind of talking about how this all gets started.
Yep.
Well, I'd like to think for the most part, I'm already, I know I said I'm more like on the depressed side, but I'd say it doesn't take too much for me to get excited about something. So the last thing, I don't want to say bipolar, but the last thing I need in my life is too many good things happen at once. And I'll use some extreme cases to make my point. Okay, and I think I've even told this to Ray a few times. I used it today. If the Cubs win on a Friday, the Bears win the championship.
Depression.
Yeah. The Bears win on Saturday. I go out with the wife on Sunday, have great sex. Monday comes and I hit the lottery. Boom. I was off to the races on Saturday.
You are right.
But again, these are all things that are kicking into my adrenaline and the mania. And I've yet to kind of study something to where there's that correlation. It's just kind of like you getting excited, and again, it's a mood disorder where there can be no boundaries.
Right.
You know, the ecstatic or the euphoria I can feel through a Cubs win isn't like unlike anybody else's, depending on, you know, where I'm at.
Yeah.
So again, but it is now my job, and I'm capable of doing it. Unlike I was before, like how you were talking about, we could just toss you around and be like, okay, hey, the Cubs won.
Yep.
We're not watching the Bears on Saturday.
Right.
Okay, that's
Or-
enough for a
Or
weekend.
give it an hour. You know what I'm saying? Give it a half a
give it
day
an
or
hour.
something.
You just got to recognize when you're escalating. And there's even times now, to be honest with you, where I wasn't really aware of this when I was younger, but like even the talking,
Yep.
the getting excited, the like getting geeked.
Yep.
And there's a difference because I'm a talker and I'm outgoing, but I'm conscious now when I'm passing.
Yeah. Loud.
Yeah.
Obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm speaking.
Passing,
I'm
going, not
speaking
even
for me.
collecting 200.
Yeah, I'm speaking for me because what I've noticed for myself is that I'll go to the cigar lounge and be the loudest guy in there. There'll be a couple people talking, and I go, I catch myself and I go, wait a minute, Ray, shut up, sit down, report for duty, do a little bit of listening. So that's kind of
I have a hard time with
skill.
people who talk quiet because it's just like, hey, you know, whatever. But
Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, that's fine. But yeah, so like things like that, like recognizes what I can handle, what I can't handle. And there was a time before I wasn't conscious of
Wasn't
any of
aware
that.
of it. Yeah.
You know, I would go out to clubs when I was younger. Me and my friends were more club people than bar people. And, 3-4 hours with the music pumping and stuff like that. I just remember I wasn't a big drinker. I was always the type that would have like some mixed drink. And, you know, I think everybody experienced like you get out and it's kind of hard to like wind down. You go to Maxwell Street afterwards or something like that. But I remember like, 6 a.m, I'm still like, just things that I didn't recognize triggered my.
Yeah, everybody's going home and you're ready to go to another club at 6 in the morning.
what may have made somebody tired made me
Yeah.
arise.
You're escalating.
So again, recognizing all these things before they.
So let's take it real quick.
Yeah.
So the Cubs win. You know,
I know that's not for everybody.
I look at it as big deal. Who are the Cubs? But it gets you. It gets the most.
My grandpa
You're putting in
bled, white, and blue Cubs.
You're putting in another gear, right?
Yeah.
So are you conscious enough? We'll call it the managing side, that you know that this one. And believe me, it takes a lot for them Cubs to win, but that you start pumping the brakes after something like that. So even if there's a soccer game championship or the Bears,
I gotta take a
they gotta
time
win.
out of something.
Yeah.
Like one of the big things I'm a big fight fan, boxing fan.
Oh, yeah.
I don't watch as much now, but like when the walkouts and the pay-per-view was on, like my heart would be beating. Now, there's a lot of people feeling the excitement, but I could tell that it's like an abnormal, like I'm all
You're
geeked up.
juiced.
And again, the round one hasn't started,
Right.
and I remember I'm like, babe, feel my heart. She'd be like, Jesus Christ, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. And again, so like after something like that, it would just be, and I'll be honest with you, for the longest time and even now, it's hard to find something to calm that. There are a couple ways we can use our imagination to, like, there's got to be some kind of a release of energy where that used to be the weight room, or that used to be go run, or something physical. And because there's, think about it, it getting that excited and then just like turning it off isn't that easy. And then sometimes you're not in a, let's just say you're at a party and you're starting to feel that, there's not a lot that can release that at the party. So you do find yourself sometimes, I have my toolbox, but there's not a lot of tools for that. So you really got to pay attention to even keeping yourself in check as that's going on. Mm-hmm. So like not going, well, after the Cubs won, I got to take a break. It's like, what do I got to do after each inning? It's got to
break it down.
It's got to get to that point where it's like, okay, it's just a game.
Which is a huge part of managing, right?
And
because
again, with this mood disorder, just let me say this real quick. And again, if anybody's not having a hard time correlating, a Cubs game to like what I'm talking about, again, it's just these excitements hitting what I'd like to call, people with bipolar, we run on, think about the, when you're looking at the heart rate, somebody's impatient, it's spiking, it's going like this. Okay, we're going like this, all of us, okay? But with somebody with bipolar, a base hit, a home run, or something exciting, it hits that and then boom, the spike, right? I got to keep the spikes from going super high.
Right.
So it's, it's just managing those triggers.
Right.
That it's kind of like poking, like I said, the Hulk, right? I'm green underneath. I got to keep those pokes.
No leakage.
Like, hey, it's just a poke. Yep. Nobody punched us.
Well, that's the defense system, right? That the tools end up building around us. Mm-hmm. Because then we become, there's no arrows coming at us to poke. Is the managing, because it's like managing everything, right? You manage.
Right.
You can manage people. You got a household. You can manage that.
You could put on armor so the arrows bounce off, but hey, what could you do so the arrows don't even get shot at you?
Right.
You got to avoid these things. And let me just say this, because I know I focused a little bit more on the mania side. Now on the negative side, so I've always been I've always been a sensitive person. What I think has hindered me with the bipolar, because there was a time when everything bothered me, good, bad, or indifferent. Again, couldn't control the triggers and didn't know how to react to the triggers, and again, tossed me around whatever I want. So I had to learn, even with the depressed side, right, of learning how to deal with negativity, whether that's just somebody calling me names, getting a bad grade, things not going at home where you get yelled at, or even the negative self-talk. And to be honest with you, my mom was the very first one that introduced me to like positive thinking, which, she used to annoy the heck out of me.
Yeah.
I used to spend a lot of times looking in the mirror when I was going through this in the beginning at like 14 of like going like, I don't like what I look at, or I don't feel inside what I look like on the outside.
Yep.
And she was just, this sounds like it's easy, but when you're really thinking about and apply these certain techniques, like mentally, my mom was real good at, hey, listen, you get your right leg chopped off, you got your left. She'd teach me how to quickly turn whatever is a negative into another way to look at it.
Right. That's huge.
And then I also had to slowly learn to detach. I don't want to say detach because I never stopped feeling, but like, hey, you know what? There's starving children in Africa, but right now you can't do nothing about it.
Right.
Feel it, but don't consume it.
Don't
let
romance
it consume
it. Don't
No,
romance
and I used
it.
to everything just used to allow. I used to allow everything to hit me. So,
right.
I had to learn a lot on coping skills and how to manage stuff. Because of that sensitivity and because of the depressive side of the bipolar too. And to be honest with you, I'd like to think, even though me and my mom and other people are consciously learning how to turn positive or negatives into positives, I was probably learning that stuff, Ray, more and before and a lot sooner than how to manage the manias. Because I think for the most part, even if you didn't deal with bipolar depression and the extreme of that, people experience sadness and depression.
Sure.
So you could talk about like the, look on the brighter side type of stuff. But you couldn't you couldn't go and be like, hey, what do you do when you have mania? There was no correlation, and nobody could really.
Not relatable.
No,
right?
It's not relatable.
Because until you find somebody who's got the relatability,
yeah,
that's where the solution is for the managing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So even though I needed a little bit more than the average person with that positivity negativity thing, at least it was a good start. Because just like in the mania, when you reach those certain realms of the depression, thinking, well, you lost one arm, you still have another when it wasn't working, at some point. But it did plant the seed of how to quickly take a situation and look at it in a different perspective,
right.
Which a lot of times was all I needed. And then there was times where, that wasn't going to be
It
the
didn't
case.
work. Yeah.
It wasn't even applicable, but yeah. So,
all right, good. So I think you covered a lot on the explanation of your experience with the bipolar, the self-help, the managing. Maybe next time we'll get into some of the managing tools, managing tool bag that you have, and how you kind of implement it in your daily life.
In the support group parts of everything.
And then not be alone with this stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Get around our people, and because it's always a big comeback. Like that comeback is always getting out of myself, the service work side, to help somebody else.
And the most I've ever learned is listening to others more than anything I've ever done personally.
Right.
And anything that any book or psychiatrist is.
Because it gets me out. It gets us out of the bullshit that comes along with the mental side of it, and it goes, oh, they're having a tough time right now too. I'm not doing so bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I could have romanced that disease bullshit, and then until I hear somebody else was really going through some stuff.
Yeah.
And then it usually snaps me back in. But that's just on the mental side. Like you were talking about that, there's a whole physical side that, like you said, the body just shuts down.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll get into talking about that on the round two.
You never have you don't have a clue when that goes on. Not you specifically, but ourselves doesn't have a clue when that kicks on and it shuts down, and you're just at the whim of whatever is
it's over.
going on.
All right, so more will be revealed. Thank you, Nate, and great job, kid. Great job.
All right. That didn't go half bad when once we got into it, but when you were asking about bipolar, I